Hey guys, Dr. Jeff here. In this video I'm going to be showing you guys some tips of what to do and what not to do while playing the bass. And also for those of you who would like to play the bass, I'm going to show you guys a good way to start playing the bass. And so to do that, I'm going to show you guys the parts of the bass that, the names that, so you guys are going to know what I'm talking about later on. So I'm going to start with these things right here. I've got two of them called the pickups. They pick up the sound and transfer it into an electrical current, which is then processed through the amplifier. So obviously it's a very important piece. Next up is the strings. Obviously I got some Rotos ones on here. They sound great. Also, in case people who are wondering, this is a Schecter Ryden 5-string. Great bass. Very versatile, especially for the price. Alright, so yeah. As you may have noticed, there are some lines located on this long neck type thing. Oddly enough, it's called a neck, the neck of the guitar. So these lines are called frets, and this entire thing, although it is the neck, this front part is called the fretboard, which is where your frets are. So technically the first fret is the first fret. This is F1, or apparently it's E1 on the E string, but there's also open. So in a lot of metal songs, they're really focus a lot of attention on the strings because that is the lowest you can get, because that's how it works. So technically open, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, all the way up to 24. 24 frets. Some basses don't go up to 24, they only have 21 or 19 maybe. But still, if you can get a bass that has 24 frets, highly recommend it. It just gives you more options, and it's more fun to mess around with more notes and different frets on the higher side. Especially, I think it's fun to do on a bass. Some people don't like to go and mess with the high notes, but I do. Just doing weird stuff like that, because that's what I do in my free time. Anyways, so tips on how to play. So tip number 1 is, for those of you who are going to be serious about playing bass, don't use your thumb. Unless you're going to slap and pop, which is a completely different iceberg that I'm not going to scratch the surface of. When I'm talking about like this, unless you're applying the bass line to Running with the Devil, it's not a very useful, it's a very inefficient way of playing the bass, just because you can only really downstrum, so that limits you to how fast you can play. You can't really play 32nd or 16th notes with your thumb. You're going to have more ways of strumming. So that's where this style comes in. My favorite, the finger style. So you're going to use your index finger and your middle finger. But for starters, we're just going to use our first finger, our index finger, because using 2 fingers is a bit more complicated, obviously, because you're using 2 fingers instead of 1. So what I'm going to do is, on the pickup, I'm going to anchor my thumb right on top, so it's resting on top there. And what this does is it gives me a place to rest my thumb and kind of anchor it. Kind of what an anchor does. It keeps the ship in. It keeps it so the ship doesn't float away or sail away when you're docked and going into town or on an island or whatever you're doing with the ship. So with this, you can have a good sturdy way, and it kind of gives you a gauge of where your fingers are in relation to your thumb and also with your hand. So it's a good way for your brain to know and for you to feel where exactly the strings are in relation to where your thumb is. So with that in mind, very simple, you're just going to use your finger and just strum the string. That's all you got to do. Very simple. Strum the string. So obviously, you can go at your own pace, however you feel comfortable. So once you feel comfortable with, getting a good finger position, I recommend just kind of starting with open strings to kind of get your right hand coordinated and calibrated to the positions of the strings. And then once you feel like you have your right hand is, you know, sturdy enough, time to incorporate these things called frets, which is basically you kind of need to play if you're playing guitar. You can't really create a song with just open notes. So. So that's a good example of just using different frets on different strings and incorporating them to make an interesting sounding little kind of riffity-doo, as I like to call them. So, alright, that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 has something to do with where exactly your fingers are, the placement are on the frets in specifics to get a nice clean, because there, believe it or not, there is a right, not a right, no, there's no like set and rule right way. But there is a better and there is a non-better place to have your fingers, just so you get a more clear sound of the note. So I'm just going to use the 7th fret just as an example. It doesn't really matter what fret; it applies to all the frets. So this tip, it's gonna it's gonna be a bigger deal with the lower frets. So basically, frets 1 through 7, maybe even 9. But it doesn't really play as it's not really as big of a deal when you're using the higher frets, just because they're a lot smaller. So there's less room to mess up, basically, with this tip in mind. So what the tip is I'm gonna bring this closer so you can see. So you're gonna want to place your finger when you're putting a finger on a fret right where. So this is where the 7th fret ends. Right, not on the fret, because that's a little uncomfortable and awkward. But slide it down like a couple centimeters, right next to it, right there. That's the sweet spot. There's no as opposed to down here. Even though it's about an inch difference, it really, really makes a difference. So you're gonna hear this a lot when you're playing like chords. So just a simple chord like right here is using my method of having it right next to the end of the fret. That's a nice crystal clear sounding chord right there. So if you notice, I just use my thumb, which is kind of funny. I told you guys not to do that, but I've been playing for a while, and that was a kind of delayed chord. If you really wanted to, you can play both, but that's really bad. So yeah, as opposed to if you play it on like the more towards the so let's compare to the 7th, more towards the 6th fret, you're gonna get some buzzing, as I call it. It's just gonna make it sound fuzzy, and you don't want it to sound fuzzy. So in this method, I'm still having my fingers on the 7th fret and the 9th fret, technically, or the 5th fret. Sorry. But if you listen carefully, there's some fuzz in there, and that's just it's the little stuff that kind of adds up when you're playing bass. So if you gotta want to go for that crystal clear sound, which is gonna make you a lot better of a player and better sounding player too. All right, so that kind of wraps up the tips I have. There's only really 2, but I mean, basically for the beginners, like, you just gotta practice. It's all it is practice. You just gotta sit down and devote at least an hour or at least a half hour, just getting your finger used to playing. Used to playing on the strings and the distances. So once you feel comfortable, sometimes like the distance from, if you have your thumb anchored here, the distance is kind all the way to the highest string, the G string, it's kind of far. And if you're going to be a fast player, kind of like that, it's easier to have your finger anchored at a closer thing, at a closer, so it just kind of allows your fingers more flexibility. So yeah, like to put it that way. So what I do is I use the string as an anchor, similar to the pickup. So what I'll do is I'll have my finger resting on either the low A string, if I have it tuned to drop, I tune it down, or the E string. So yeah, that's when you feel. I recommend starting with. Don't really worry about the strings. Just do the pickups. Stick with the pickup, and then once you feel comfortable with that, then move to the strings. But that's down the road. Excuse me. Sorry. So yeah. So grab yourself a bass and get playing. Thank you for watching my video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. See you later.